In some of our recent videos, we've been hammering the point that the entire laptop industry is already taking steps to replace traditional x86-based chips like the ones from Intel with low-power ARM and RISC-V based chips in an attempt to compete with Apple's excellent M1 MacBooks as well as their upcoming M1X MacBook Pros. For example, Microsoft announced that they're going to be designing their own ARM-based chips for servers and Surface PCs like their Surface Laptop 4. Qualcomm also recently acquired ARM-based chip designer company Nuvia before announcing plans to design ARM-based chips that can compete with Apple's M1 Max. AMD is also rumored to be working on an ARM-based Apple M1 chip rival with integrated RAM. Samsung is planning a high-performance ARM-based chip with an AMD GPU for the laptop market. Nvidia has already announced and showed off an ARM-based gaming laptop with an RTX 3060 GPU with ray tracing. And even Intel, the creators of x86, are working with Sci5 to create 7nm RISC-V based chips for the laptop market next year. So it's quite obvious that ARM-based chips are about to start taking over the laptop market thanks to the success of Apple's M1 chip. But the big question is how these future ARM-based laptops will play modern games, since most games out there are written for x86 Windows systems, so porting them over to ARM-based code is going to be extremely difficult and time-consuming. On top of that, ARM-based chips like Apple's M1 absolutely do not support the main DRM-level anti-cheat systems out there, which are required in order to play various online multiplayer games like Call of Duty, Overwatch, Valorant, and many more. So although we were able to actually download some of those games on our M1 Mac under Windows 10 using methods like Parallel 16 and Crossover 20, the games wouldn't even run at all. So there is obviously a ton of work that needs to get done before ARM-based laptops can go mainstream, requiring all of these problems to get fixed in order to have a great gaming experience. And that's where Valve comes into this story, because their master plan to dominate the gaming market is also going to revolutionize gaming on ARM for everybody else, including Apple and their M series Macs. If you're not familiar with Valve, they created some of the most popular PC game franchises like Half-Life, Counter-Strike, Portal, Team Fortress, Left 4 Dead, and Dota 2. But the real accomplishment is Steam, a game delivery platform which is the world's largest distributor of PC games, taking up 75% of the global market share, with 50 to 70% of the world's PC game downloads taking place on Steam. And for every single game sale, Valve takes a 25 to 30% cut for themselves, which is why in 2010, Valve released Steam for macOS, and then in 2013, they released Steam for Linux, basically in an attempt to control the entire gaming market. This undoubtedly took a lot of development hours to make happen, and unfortunately, today, macOS and Linux only account for 5% and 1% of the gaming market share respectively. And part of the reason is because Apple hasn't really been doing much to help macOS gaming in recent years, like when they completely dropped support for 32-bit apps, and especially when they dropped support for OpenGL, forcing everyone to use Metal. So Valve devised a master plan that would fix gaming across all of the gaming platforms at once, helping them capture as much market share as possible with Steam, even in the wake of an ARM-based laptop revolution that we're now seeing today. And that master plan begins with Vulkan, which is a low-overhead, cross-platform, open standard API, which is meant to take away the dominance of Microsoft's proprietary DirectX API, which is not cross-platform at all, only running on Windows software. And since most games are created for Windows using DirectX, this means that Valve's cross-platform domination goals can't happen. So Valve took things into their own hands. In 2014, the Kronos Group, the creators of OpenCL and OpenGL, had a meeting with Valve to kick off a project to create a next-gen graphics API, which became Vulkan. Then in 2015, Valve funded Lunar G to develop and showcase a Linux driver for Intel, which enabled Vulkan on their integrated graphics. And over the years, more and more companies started supporting Vulkan in the form of drivers for the Linux and Windows systems. Today, AMD supports Vulkan in its CPUs and GPUs. Android fully supports and uses Vulkan. Qualcomm fully supports Vulkan in all of their mobile chips. NVIDIA even hosted a Vulkan Developer Day in 2020 to gather support for the API. And even ARM themselves support Vulkan. On top of that, Sci5's RISC-V processors, which Intel will be using, also support Imagination's PowerVR GPU, which is the first fully featured GPU to support Vulkan. So based on all of that, it's pretty clear that the future of gaming on ARM computers is gonna fully rely on the cross-platform Vulkan API, which conveniently also works on Windows with x86 chips. And don't forget that it was Valve who was doing a lot of the developer work to get Vulkan on its feet, which kind of makes me believe that Valve actually invented Vulkan, since the very first meeting on Vulkan's development was hosted by Valve. But with all that said, Vulkan did run into a couple of major issues. In 2018, Apple refused to support Vulkan since they wanted developers to use their own Metal software. So Kronos ended up bringing Vulkan to macOS and iOS using something called MoltenVK, which is completely open source. MoltenVK is a Vulkan to Metal API translation layer for macOS, and it works by automatically converting SPIR-V shaders to Apple's Metal shading language, basically enabling games that support the Vulkan API to run on Apple Silicon Macs. So it's basically like a Rosetta, but for gaming. And what's interesting is that it was actually Valve who worked on creating MoltenVK, since Kronos directly mentioned them in their press release. Because of MoltenVK, I was able to play Windows games like Team Fortress 2 and Witcher 3 on the M1 MacBook Pro by using an app called Crossover 20 to enable DXVK to make the games run using Vulkan. And on top of that, it was found out that 2 of Valve's contractors are directly responsible for creating these translation layers like DXVK. So Valve is already improving macOS gaming. Mr. Mac Wright on YouTube recently posted a video of 15 games running on an Apple M1 Mac using MoltenVK. And one of those games is Metro Exodus, which was released to macOS on April 14th by 4A Games, being available to download straight from the Mac version of Steam. But according to Mr. Mac Wright, 4A Games worked directly with Apple's own engineers to port the game over to macOS. And believe it or not, they did it using MoltenVK to translate the Vulkan API into the Metal API, all running under Rosetta 2 to translate the x86 code. So we basically now have Apple utilizing the MoltenVK translation layer that Valve created to bring games to the Mac without requiring the game developer to rebuild the game to give it native Apple Silicon support, and that is just incredible. And believe it or not, there are popular gaming emulators out there like Dolphin that run on M1 Macs, and they run using MoltenVK. Mr. Mac Wright also showed off other games like Final Fantasy XIV, Path of Exile, and The Elder Scrolls Online that all run on macOS thanks to MoltenVK. Now, the only issue is that performance on M1 Macs isn't that great just yet, since Apple's M1 GPU still isn't that powerful, but as you know, Apple's M1X Macs are coming in a couple of months, and we're expecting GPU performance of up to around 80 to 90,000 points in Geekbench 5's Metal test with the 32-core model, similar to the performance of an RTX 3060 graphics card, which NVIDIA recently showed off. So yeah, actual AAA gaming is coming to the M1X Macs using methods like Crossover 20, no longer requiring game developers to entirely rebuild games for the Mac, and it's all thanks to Valve and their MoltenVK translation layer. But going even further, Valve is fixing Linux gaming as well. As you probably already know, Valve recently revealed the Steam Deck, a portable gaming computer that runs its own SteamOS, which is actually built on Linux. And the problem with that is that many games are built to support Windows, so they simply will not run on Linux. And this brings us back to Valve's master plan that began way back in 2014. In order for the Steam Deck to succeed, Valve needed to create a cross-platform API that would gain widespread support, since Microsoft's DirectX only really works on Windows. So Valve created Vulkan, which is now supported by everything from Android phones to Intel and AMD chips, to Nvidia and AMD GPUs, to ARM and RISC-V chips, and now by macOS using MoltenVK. But then the next step in their master plan was genius. In 2018, Valve took DXVK and transformed it into Proton, which is basically a translation layer that allows Windows games to run on Linux through Steam. And 3 years later, we now know why Valve put in all of that effort. The new Steam Deck absolutely needed Proton in order to play Windows games without them being fully ported over to Linux, similar to what Valve did with MoltenVK for macOS. So for the past 8 years, Valve has been basically doing everything they can to make sure that macOS and Linux have the best gaming support possible to make more revenue from Steam. And not only that, but the Vulkan API that Valve created is basically required to make gaming possible on ARM-based laptops, since Windows on ARM is still really terrible for gaming. And get this, Nvidia recently showed off their ARM-based gaming laptop, and if you look closely, it was running Linux the entire time and not Windows. And it was doing it under Vulkan, as you can see in the title. And I can guarantee that it was running using Valve's Proton for Linux. But with all of that said, there is still one major issue that needs to be solved. Multiplayer games that use DRM-level anti-cheat systems will not work at all on ARM-based laptops, and they don't support Linux systems as well, which is a major problem for Steam's upcoming Steam Deck gaming PC. But according to the Steam Deck FAQ, Valve is actually working with BattlEye and Easy Anti-Cheat, the most popular anti-cheat systems out there, to get support for Proton ahead of launch, which should be in December. This is amazing news because prior to this, nobody was able to get these anti-cheat systems to change their ways, so supporting Proton is going to be a huge deal. And since Proton works very similarly to MoltenVK for macOS, Apple's ARM-based Macs should finally get anti-cheat support as well. And the simple fact that Nvidia is coming out with their own ARM-based gaming laptop means that those anti-cheat systems will be forced to support ARM no matter what. So basically, to sum up this entire video, the future of gaming on ARM is incredibly bright, and believe it or not, it's all thanks to Valve's 8-year master plan to create the open standard Vulkan API, as well as the MoltenVK and Proton translation layers for macOS and Linux, and finally, getting the anti-cheat systems to support them, which is gonna greatly benefit future ARM-based laptops like Apple's M1X MacBook Pros. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you learned something new, go ahead and click the circle button to subscribe for more videos like this one, and definitely check out one of those 2 videos right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.